knowing that when the federal government gets your income so high, it's very hard to pull back because you're used to it, right? So you have to constantly look not to continue to take all the money. One of the things that we did this year is we put in process to hold the bureaucracy of the government in Tennessee accountable for grant funding. So we're no longer chasing grant dollars just to get grant dollars because someone has a job to go get grant dollars. If they're going to get grants, they have to be approved by a certain committee in the General Assembly. So now we have oversight. We know what they're doing. We know what the rules are going to be. We know what they're going to ask from us if we have to have more employees. And now we have oversight over that process so we can start limiting money, because the grants, when they come in, like you say, they say, oh, you need to impose this, you need to do this. And earlier what I was talking about with COVID money in the Biden administration with Oak Ridge National Labs, all these businesses have federal contracts to go in. Well, what they started putting in there is all your employees have to be vaccinated. They have to do this. And if they're not going to do that, you don't get the contract.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. The podcast is on the road and we're recording from the State Policy Network annual meeting, where leaders from across the country come together to talk about freedom, limited government, and local solutions. And one of the great things about being here is not just getting to meet people from all over the country, but also hearing directly from lawmakers about what's happening in their states. Today, we're joined by one of those lawmakers, and he's a leader who believes students should have more educational options and the government should spend within its means, and that taxes should remain low. He's an East Tennessee native, a University of Tennessee graduate, was first elected to office back in 2010, and since 2019, he's served as the Tennessee Speaker of the House. I want to welcome to the podcast Speaker Cameron Sexton. Welcome, Speaker. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, really
It's fun to be in New Orleans. So
yeah, well, it is, but I mean, you know, you're from Tennessee. A lot of people get excited to go to your state just as much as New Orleans. You know, I had some pretty good times in Tennessee, and unfortunately, I think I mentioned to you, I live in the state of Illinois, and I feel like 1 out of 3 of my friends are all moving to Tennessee. Unfortunately, some of my kids are probably going to do the same.
Oh, well, we welcome them all.
Yeah, like you keep passing good policy, it'll probably keep happening. So let's get to like what you guys have been doing. I mean, there's been some great stuff going on in Tennessee in the last few years. So specifically, an issue that I care a lot about, I help lead our efforts on education freedom at Americans for Prosperity, and you guys have become real leaders there. So, you know, what made it important for you to get behind school choice in Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think COVID opened a lot of eyes of individuals across the country and in Tennessee about where the parents started having concerns about what the school systems or school boards were trying to do, whether masks or vaccinations, social distancing, and what they were imposing. And when the parents went to talk to the school board members at the meetings, they just kind of turned their backs on them, threw them out. And so all of a sudden you saw that the parents weren't in charge of their child's education, nor did anyone care about what the parents were saying. And so that kind of changed the momentum in it to a lot extent. And then what you have is the need for more competition. The parents need to be in charge of their child's education. Yeah. It may be public, it may be private, it may be a homeschool, it may be a charter school, but they should be the ones making that decision. They shouldn't be limited by their zip code or street address.
Yeah, I think the idea, it shouldn't be revolutionary, but the idea that families should make the decision for how their kids are best educated really, I think, should resonate with folks. And but you know, there's a lot of people who've pushed back on that idea. And you know, one of the pushbacks against school choice is that it's going to take money away from public schools. So how do you answer that?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not the school's money; it's the parents' money. They're the ones who are funding the budget, and so in Tennessee we don't have a state income tax, thankfully, but we do have a sales tax and other taxes. Those taxes fund our education budget. They funds the local budget, so it's their money. So if they're not happy with the product that their child's going to, they should be able to take their money that's allotted for that child and decide what's best for them. And so I think what happens is in the beginning, you in the polling, people aren't for it, and then we just had a poll come out after we passed it, and now we have 20,000 people on it and looking to expand it to 40 to 50,000. Believe it or not, Republicans are plus 32 on school choice, independents are plus 20, and Democrats are plus 18.
Oh, wow.
It's a total shift.
That's
after
pretty
the fact.
dramatic. Yeah. That's great. Well, and I would guess that that'll only get better as people live with it and experience the benefits of it. I think that's fabulous.
It should. I mean, it really should. And then what it should do is make the public schools actually have to compete for that student now, which they probably weren't doing too much competing for that student, minus athletics. But now they're having to compete for that student to stay at their school.
So, there are a number of other states that had passed education freedom in years past. Did you guys learn anything from looking at other states to inform your effort?
We did a little bit. I mean, we looked at what other people did. We kind of do it a little unique. We did it outside the education funding this time. We have universal choice, which is very hard for other people to do. So there's part of it has no income limits. And so there was some pushback on that, but that was the right direction to go.
That's awesome. So, when it comes to school lunches, the Department of Education has some requirements that the school has to do with leftovers. And I know that you've made mention of this. So what are they being required to do?
Yeah, so in Tennessee, we have about $1.2 to $1.4 billion coming in for our education department. They're interesting, very little, next to nothing goes to the classroom. It's all supports things. And so one of those things is the school lunch program or free and reduced lunch program. It runs about $500, $600 million of that amount. And the lunch people say, we have all this food left over at the end of the day after lunch is over. There's people who are going home hungry. Can we box it up and send it home with them? And the federal guidelines say, no, the only thing you can send home is things that have been wrapped and that has an expiration date. You can't send this home. And so they have to throw it away. And that, from what we have uncovered, that's about 30% waste. So that's hundreds of millions of dollars being thrown in the trash can because the federal government does not want people to take a meal home.
I mean, that's like actual government waste.
It is. It is. And that's why when you take the federal money, all of a sudden that's what you have to do, even if you don't want to do it. And so if we can pay for it ourselves, then we can be a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
And then we can provide a secondary benefit to the students as they're going home as well.
I mean, just seems to make a little too much sense, huh?
Yeah, common sense is sometimes not logical to some.
Yeah. All right, so switching from education to government spending, where do you see the best opportunities to cut costs, maybe without cutting services?
Yeah, I mean, you constantly have to look at it, right? I think the best way is with the Medicaid program. I was having conversations with people today. The Medicaid program is still set up like it was back in the 60s and 70s or when it was created. But you look at all the states and their pension plans, they've evolved to the 401k model. Yep. No one has the full state pension plans from the 50s and 60s anymore. You can't afford it. But we're running our healthcare system and Medicaid like it's still the same. So we need to innovate, maybe get to a health savings account, do some other things. That's where you can save money, but you give people a better product than what we currently have.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. Are there parts of the state government that you think are duplicative or overlapping where you think that some reform could?
I mean, there is. I mean, look, one example in Tennessee is child care.
Yeah.
So if you're going to open up a child care agency, you got to go through multiple departments. You got to go through Department of Education if you have pre-K or you're doing any teaching. You have to go through DHS. You're going to have to go through Commerce and Insurance for building. And so it becomes very hard for a small business owner who's trying to do something good to actually get the license. It becomes very difficult. And so trying to streamline those processes would limit duplication, which would limit the cost it would put on the person, but also the cost to the state, and we'd be more efficient. So there's things like that all the time out there.
So in Tennessee, you have no state income tax.
Right.
And you've really worked to keep taxes lower, to cut taxes. How do you balance that with maintaining a strong fiscal health for the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it goes back to what Ronald Reagan said: when you cut taxes, you'll have growth. So we've eliminated 3 to 4 taxes. We cut business taxes. We've cut sales tax. We've eliminated taxes. We're also paying down more debt, so we have less debt than we've ever had before. We're the least debt state and the least tax state in America.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And we're still growing, right?
Yeah.
So the principle works. What you have to be very careful of is when you start having that budget surplus, that you don't start putting in programs that are recurring. So we spend a lot of money in non-recurring things after tax cuts, like building vocational education schools across the state to help more people get into electricians or plumbing. We put more money into roads through that mechanism. We've done capital projects at the universities and other things. So we're using that recurring money one time. So when it comes back, we can continue to look to cut taxes or continue to look at how we can benefit our state.
That's great. A fiscally responsible approach. You use one-time monies for one-time projects and actually have a sustainable.
When you need to. Right.
That being from the state of Illinois myself, it's refreshing to hear and kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so one final question. So, a lot of times federal money, let me go back. We're talking a lot on the show about just the transformation that's happening at the federal level under President Trump's leadership, an aligned Congress, the one big beautiful bill and other things that are happening at the regulatory level and others. There's just a lot of really exciting things happening that I think will benefit all Americans.
Right.
But the reality is when the federal government's involved, you mentioned with the school lunches, there are strings that are attached.
Right.
And so how do you deal with that at the state level, especially when your state that is running a tight ship, being fiscally responsible, really trying to help your state grow, but you do get a lot of federal money. Everybody does. How do you deal with the strings that are attached or kind of mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, so you have to understand that there are strings attached, right? And there's no such thing as free money. And the Democrats love to say, "Oh, it's free money. We should expand. It's free money." Well, it's not free money. It's debt money, to be honest with you. But it's also like a parent, as you told me earlier. You have children. I have children. Yep. The best day is when they're financially free from you, right? Yeah. That's a great day. The states need to be able to be financially free the best you can from the federal government, knowing that when the federal government gets your income so high, it's very hard to pull back because you're used to it, right? So you have to constantly look not to continue to take all the money. One of the things that we did this year is we put in process to hold the bureaucracy of the government in Tennessee accountable for grant funding. So we're no longer chasing grant dollars just to get grant dollars because someone has a job to go get grant dollars. If they're going to get grants, they have to be approved by a certain committee in the General Assembly. So now we have oversight. We know what they're doing. We know what the rules are going to be. We know what they're going to ask from us if we have to have more employees. And now we have oversight over that process so we can start limiting money because the grants, when they come in, like you say, they say, "Oh, you need to impose this, or you need to do this." And earlier what I was talking about with COVID money in the Biden administration with Oak Ridge National Labs, all these businesses have federal contracts to go in. Well, what they started putting in there is all your employees have to be vaccinated. They have to do this. And if they're not going to do that, you don't get the contract. And so you have to understand what's in that contract. And the states do a very poor job of understanding what the requirements are, or it's not transparent to the General Assembly what those requirements are. And so we're trying to do a better job of having clarity on what that is.
That's great. Well, I don't, seems kind of silly for me to encourage you to keep up the good work, but I really, from afar, have been watching what you guys are doing. And I know you're a great partner with our Tori Venable and our team there. I'd love to, work alongside and support of a lot of the great things that you guys are doing. And we really appreciate
thank
that
you.
leadership.
Yeah,
there.
we're looking forward to many great years in Tennessee. And our goal is as we're competing with other states, we want to compete internationally and have Tennessee put on the map.
It's definitely moving in the right direction. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Great. If you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.